Eric had been stationed on the alien world of Valeria for 6 months. His mission was simple on the surface: to maintain peace between the various factions of the Valeria Empire, a planet ruled by the mighty and revered Queen Arvasha. She was known across the galaxy for her wisdom, her leadership, and most notably, her beauty. Eric had heard countless stories of her from his fellow soldiers, but nothing could prepare him for the moment he first laid eyes on her. It was during a diplomatic gathering in the palace that Eric's world changed forever. The room was filled with representatives from all over the galaxy, each one vying for the Queen's attention. Eric, though trained for combat and negotiation, couldn't focus on any of them. His eyes were locked on the woman at the center of the room. Queen Arvasha stood tall, her regal presence commanding respect from everyone around her. Her long silver hair shimmered like moonlight, cascading down her back. Her eyes, a deep shade of violet, held a power that seemed to penetrate into his very soul. She wore a gown that sparkled, woven with threads of gold and silver, and every movement she made seemed to speak of both grace and strength. She wasn't just a ruler. She was a symbol of everything powerful and beautiful in the universe. Erika stood at the edge of the crowd, trying to appear calm and composed. He had been trained to interact with foreign dignitaries, but nothing prepared him for this. The Queen's eyes briefly met his, and in that moment, his heart skipped a beat. There was no way she could notice him, a simple soldier. He quickly looked away, hoping his face wasn't turning red, but the feeling of her gaze lingered. As the evening wore on, Eric found himself distracted, lost in thoughts of the Queen. His mission was to negotiate peace, but now it felt insignificant compared to the overwhelming pull he felt toward her. He couldn't deny that there was something in the air whenever she spoke, a certain magic to her words, a weight to her presence that left him breathless. He had heard rumors of her power, how she could control the elements and read minds, how her very name made enemies tremble, but none of it seemed to compare to the sheer force of her being. Days passed, and Eric's duties kept him busy, but his thoughts often drifted back to the Queen. During meetings with her advisors, he found himself stealing glances at her, wondering if she ever noticed him. He tried to focus on his work, but the more he saw her, the more he felt drawn to her. There was an intensity about her that he couldn't ignore. One afternoon, as Eric walked through the grand halls of the palace, he stumbled upon a small garden. It was a peaceful place, surrounded by towering stone walls that shielded it from the bustling city outside. He had come here to clear his mind, but as he wandered deeper into the garden, he found himself face to face with the Queen. She was standing alone by a fountain, her back to him. Her long silver hair caught the light, and for a moment, Eric couldn't breathe. There was something ethereal about the way she stood, as though she were a part of the very landscape itself. He hesitated, unsure if he should speak. But before he could turn and leave, she spoke. "You've been staring at me for days, Commander," she said, her voice calm but with a hint of amusement. Eric froze, his heart racing. I didn't mean to—" "I'm sorry, Your Majesty," he stammered, his face flushing. He had no idea how she had known, but the fact that she knew was both terrifying and exhilarating. The Queen turned to face him, her violet eyes locking with his. "There's no need to apologize," she said, her voice softening. "It's not often that someone looks at me without fear. Most men are too intimidated to even glance in my direction." Eric didn't know what to say. He had always been trained to maintain a professional distance, but something about the Queen made that impossible. There was a kindness in her eyes, an openness that made him feel like he wasn't just another soldier to her. She wasn't the untouchable ruler that the galaxy painted her to be. She was a woman, just like any other. "I'm not intimidated, Your Majesty," Eric finally said, his voice steady. I just never imagined I'd be in the presence of someone so extraordinary." "Extraordinary?" she repeated. "I am merely a ruler, a servant to my people." Eric shook his head. "No, Your Majesty," he said, taking a step closer. You're more than that. You're a symbol, not just for Valeria, but for the entire galaxy. People look up to you. They see you as their savior, their protector. And yet, here you are, standing in front of me, just talking.
That's what makes you extraordinary.
The Queen's lips curled into a small smile. And for the first time, Eric saw a glimpse of vulnerability in her eyes. It was fleeting, but it was enough to stir something deep inside him. She was human, after all. She had emotions, desires, fears, just like him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the gentle trickle of the fountain, and for a brief moment the weight of the universe seemed to disappear. It was just Eric and the Queen, two people caught in a world far bigger than either of them. I don't usually allow myself to be vulnerable, the Queen said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. But I
feel something when I'm near you, Commander. Something I haven't felt in years.
Eric's heart raced at her words. He didn't know what to say, so he simply nodded. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, Your Majesty, he said softly. But I would be lying if I didn't say that I feel the same way. The Queen looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, without warning, she stepped closer, her presence overwhelming yet comforting. Perhaps, then we are not so different after all, she murmured, her breath soft against his skin. As their eyes met, Eric realized that the path ahead of them was uncertain. He was a simple soldier, and she was the queen of a mighty empire. Their worlds could never truly align. But for the first time, Eric felt like maybe, just maybe, there was a way for them to be together. The days following their encounter in the garden were filled with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. Eric couldn't stop thinking about Queen Arvasha. He was stationed on Valeria as part of a peacekeeping mission. But now, his thoughts were no longer on the mission alone. It was the Queen who consumed his mind, her image haunting him during the long hours of his work. He had never been one to dwell on emotions. He had always been the practical type, focused on his duties. But something about her had changed him. He often found himself looking for excuses to pass by the palace, hoping to see her again, even for a brief moment. And then, just as fate would have it, he got his chance. One afternoon, as he was walking along the grand hallway of the palace, a voice called out to him, "Commander Eric!" He turned quickly, his heart racing as he saw the Queen standing in front of a grand door. Her eyes met his, and there was no mistaking the smile that graced her lips. It wasn't just a polite smile. It was one that spoke of something deeper, something more personal. "Your Majesty," Eric said, his voice betraying his nervousness. He had never been this close to her before. There was a certain warmth in the way she looked at him, as if she recognized the bond they had started to form. He tried to maintain his composure, but it was impossible not to feel the pull between them. "I've been meaning to speak with you," the Queen said softly. She gestured for him to follow her inside. Eric hesitated for a moment. Was this an official meeting? Was she about to scold him for something? He had no idea what to expect. But as soon as they entered the room, he realized it was a private chamber. The door closed behind them, and the atmosphere became more intimate, almost surreal. "Please sit," she said, motioning to a nearby chair. Eric sat down, unsure of what to say. The Queen stood by the window, her silhouette framed by the soft light of the setting sun. There was something captivating about her, something that made Eric forget all about the galaxy and his mission. In that moment, nothing else seemed to matter. "I wanted to apologize for earlier," the Queen began, her voice gentle. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable when I spoke to you in the garden. I know it's not common for someone like me to speak so freely." Eric blinked in surprise. "Your Majesty, there's no need to apologize. I was honored that you spoke to me. The Queen turned to face him, her violet eyes locking with his. There was a depth in her gaze that made Eric's heart skip a beat. I don't often let my guard down, she confessed. I'm the Queen. People are always watching me, always expecting me to be perfect. But you, Arik, you don't seem to care about that. You treat me like a person, not a symbol or a ruler. Eric was quiet for a moment, his mind racing. What was he supposed to say? He wasn't trying to flatter her. He was simply being honest. I think everyone deserves to be seen for who they are, not just for the title they hold. That's why I find you so intriguing, Eric. You see me not as a queen, but as a woman. And that is rare, especially for someone in my position. A silence hung in the air between them, heavy and charged with unspoken words. The Queen walked toward him, her presence overwhelming yet comforting. She paused just a few steps away from him, her gaze never leaving his. I've been alone for so long, she murmured. Even though I'm surrounded by people, I've never had someone I could truly be myself with. My prayers, I've always had to be the Queen. Strong, unbreakable, flawless. But with you, Eric, I don't feel that pressure. I feel like I can be human. Eric's breath caught in his throat. He had never expected to hear those words from her. She, the most powerful woman in the galaxy, the one who commanded armies and shaped destinies, was admitting vulnerability to him. The realization that she trusted him with this part of herself filled him with both awe and responsibility. I don't know what to say, Eric admitted. But I want to be that person for you, Your Majesty. I want to be someone you can rely on, someone you can trust.
I don't want you to be alone anymore.
The Queen's eyes shimmered with a mixture of emotions. There was a quiet strength in the way she held herself, but there was also a longing, a desire for something more than what her position allowed her to have.
You're different, Eric,
she said softly. You don't view me through the lens of power. You don't fear me. And that is a gift. Parik looked down for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Your Majesty, I don't know what this is, but I feel a connection to you. Something that I've never felt before. I never thought I would feel this way, especially not towards someone like you, but I can't ignore it. The Queen stepped closer, her presence enveloping him. I feel it too, Eric, she said quietly. But I am the Queen, and you are a soldier. Our worlds are so different. How could something like this ever work? Eric's heart ached as he looked at her. He had known this from the beginning. Their positions in life were miles apart. She was the ruler of an empire, and he was a simple soldier from a distant planet. But in that moment, none of that seemed to matter. I don't know what the future holds, he said, his voice steady. But I do know that I want to be by your side, whatever comes. The Queen's eyes flickered with something that could have been hope, or perhaps something deeper. You're brave, Eric, she said, her voice filled with admiration. Braver than most men I've known. I don't know where this will lead us, but I want to see where it goes. Arik stood up, taking a step toward her. I want that too, Your Majesty. For a long moment, they simply stood there, gazing at each other. The weight of the galaxy seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them in the quiet of the room. In that moment, Arik knew that his life had changed forever. No matter what the future held, he would stand by her side. I must return to my duties, the Queen said, breaking the silence. But this conversation has meant more to me than I can express. Eric nodded, though he didn't want to leave her presence. I understand, Your Majesty. The Queen gave him a soft smile. We'll speak again soon. As Eric turned to leave the room, his heart felt lighter than it had in weeks. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. There were many challenges to face, both political and personal. But for the first time since his arrival on Valeria, he felt that the future wasn't so uncertain. He had someone to fight for, and perhaps, just perhaps, they could find a way to be together. Days turned into weeks, and the tension between the two worlds continued to grow. Eric's thoughts were still consumed by Queen Urvasha, but now they were also filled with the weight of their shared responsibility. He had come to Valeria to negotiate peace, but that mission now felt insignificant compared to the bond he was beginning to form with her. The delicate balance of their relationship had to be kept a secret. There were too many eyes watching, too many dangers that could tear them apart. Despite the growing political pressure, Eric couldn't stop thinking about her. He found himself sneaking into the palace garden whenever he could, hoping to see her for just a few moments. Each time his heart would race as he spotted her, standing tall and regal, yet always with a kind smile for him. Their conversations, once brief and polite, had become longer, more meaningful. They shared stories of their pasts, their hopes, and their fears. The queen, who had always been seen as an unapproachable ruler, was beginning to show him a side of herself she had kept hidden for so long. One evening, as Eric was finishing up a particularly grueling day of diplomatic discussions, he received a summons. It was from the queen herself. The message was simple. "Meet me in the courtyard tonight." He had been waiting for a chance to speak to her alone, but now that it was here, he was unsure of what to expect. What did she want to talk about? Was she still unsure about their connection, or was she ready to take the next step? The questions flooded his mind as he made his way to the courtyard. The moonlight bathed the courtyard in a soft glow as he stepped inside. There, standing beneath a large tree, was Queen Urvasha. She looked as beautiful as ever, her silver hair flowing like a river of light in the darkness. Her violet eyes caught the glow of the moon, and she turned toward him as he approached. "You came," she said softly, her voice warm and inviting. "I said I would," Eric replied, his voice steady despite the rapid beating of his heart. "You asked, Your Majesty." She smiled at him, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. It wasn't the smile of a queen, commanding and distant. It was the smile of a woman who had found someone who understood her. "I've been thinking," she began, her tone serious, "about everything we've talked about."
About us? Eric's heart raced, unsure of where this was leading.
"And what have you decided, Your Majesty?" She took a step closer to him, her eyes searching his face. "I've decided that I can't deny what I feel anymore, what we feel. But I also know that we cannot be together in the way I want. My responsibilities, my duty as queen come first." Eric felt a pang of disappointment in his chest. He had known this would be difficult, but hearing her say it out loud made it all the more real. Still, he refused to let the despair show on his face. "I understand," he said quietly. "I know the weight of your position, Queen Urvasha, but that doesn't change how I feel. I'm here for you, no matter what." But the queen looked at him, her expression softening. "And that's why I've called you here tonight. Because I need you to understand something." She paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I can't ask you to give up everything for me, Eric. You've built a life on your own, far from Valeria. But I've been living in a gilded cage for so long. I've had to be strong, unyielding. I've had to be perfect. But you..." Her voice trailed off as she looked at him. "You make me feel human again. You make me feel like I can be more than just a ruler. I want you, Eric. More than you can imagine." The words she spoke hit Eric like a wave. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. The queen, the powerful and untouchable ruler, was admitting that she wanted him, that she saw him as more than just a soldier. Aye. Eric didn't know what to say. His emotions were a whirlwind. "I want you too, Your Majesty." More than anything. She smiled again, though this time there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "But I can't just abandon my people, Auric. I can't abandon my throne. If I marry you, if I choose to be with you, there will be those who will never accept it. My enemies will use it against us."
"There are too many risks." Eric nodded,
his mind racing. He had known the risks. He had known the consequences of their bond, but he was willing to face them. He had always known that peace wouldn't come easily, and love, true love, was even harder to find.
I'm willing to face them, Eric said firmly.
I don't care what anyone thinks, Your Majesty. If being with you means risking everything, then I'll take that risk. Queen Arvasha stepped closer to him, her hand reaching out to gently touch his arm. You would give up everything for me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper.
Yes, Arik replied without hesitation. I've never been more certain of anything in my life.
I'll stand by your side, whatever the cost. Her eyes searched his face, as if looking for any sign of doubt. When she found none, she sighed softly. Then we have much to discuss. And so, under the moonlight, in the quiet courtyard of the palace, Eric and Queen Arvasha made their decision. They would be together, no matter the cost. It wouldn't be easy. There would be battles to fight, both internal and external. But their bond was stronger than any obstacle they would face. In the days that followed, the political landscape of Valeria began to shift. Word spread of the Queen's decision to choose her heart over her duty. And as expected, not everyone was pleased. There were whispers in the halls of the palace, and those who had once been loyal to the Queen began to question her judgment. Arik knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but he was ready for them. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a partner, and equal to the Queen, and together they would face whatever came their way. As the days passed, Eric and Queen Arvasha found themselves swept deeper into the tide of change. The political winds of Valeria had begun to shift, and with every decision the Queen made, there were whispers that echoed throughout the palace and beyond. Eric knew their relationship was risky, not just for them, but for the entire empire. Yet, in spite of the danger, their bond continued to grow, something neither of them could easily ignore. Eric spent more time with the Queen, not as a soldier or a diplomat, but as someone she could trust, someone who was becoming an essential part of her life. They met in private as often as they could, away from the prying eyes of the court. In these quiet moments, Arik saw a side of Arvasha that no one else did. She was not just the mighty Queen of Valeria, but a woman who longed for freedom, for peace, and for a life where she could be loved without the weight of her crown on her head. One evening, as Eric walked through the lush palace gardens, he felt a familiar sense of anticipation. It had become their usual meeting spot where they could speak freely, away from the formality of the court. As he approached the fountain where they often met, he saw her waiting for him. She looked as regal as ever, yet there was something different in her eyes, a quiet determination. "Eric," she greeted him with a soft smile, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. "Your Majesty," he replied, his voice warm. He had long since stopped calling her anything formal. They had come to a place where their titles no longer mattered. "I have news," she said, her tone serious. "The Council is pushing for a marriage alliance with the Koran Empire. They think it will secure Valeria's future. But what they don't understand is that this marriage would only bind us to their whims. If I agree to this, it would mean forsaking everything I've worked for." Arik's heart sank at the mention of the Koran Empire. He had heard of their ruthless tactics, and had seen firsthand how they dominated weaker empires. The thought of the Queen being tied to them in any way made him uneasy. He stepped closer to her, taking her hands in his. "You don't have to do this," Eric said quietly. "You don't have to sacrifice yourself for the sake of an alliance. You have another option. You have me." Arvasha looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. She pulled her hands back slowly, stepping away from him.
I wish it were that simple, she murmured. The fate of my people is in my hands.
I cannot ignore my duty, Eric. If I do, everything could fall apart.
"But your happiness matters too," Eric insisted. "You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders alone." Let me help you carry it. Together we can find a way that doesn't involve giving up what you want. What we want." The queen looked at him with a mixture of admiration and sadness. "I want what you want, Arik. I want to be with you, to build a future where we can both be free. But I don't know if that's possible. The council will never accept it."
"My people will never accept it." Eric stepped forward, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Then we'll make them see. We'll show them that your happiness is just as important as the stability of Valeria."
"You don't have to choose one over the other." The queen's eyes softened as she looked at him.
You make it sound so simple, but the truth is, my people have been through too much.
They've known war and they've known peace, but I'm not sure they know what it means to trust their leaders again. They'll see our union as a weakness. They'll see it as a threat. Eric's heart ached for her. He knew the pressure she was under. The crown she wore was not just a symbol of power, it was a constant burden. But he also knew that if anyone could change things, it was her. He believed in her, and he knew that together they could overcome anything. "We'll fight for it," he said with conviction. "We'll fight for what we believe in, and we'll do it together." She smiled softly at his words, her gaze filled with a mixture of love and fear. "I wish I had your faith in me, Eric. But sometimes I wonder if I'm strong enough to lead my people through what's coming, if I'm strong enough to lead us both." Arik reached out and gently cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek.
You've always been strong enough.
"And I'll be with you every step of the way." She closed her eyes at his touch, letting out a soft sigh. For a moment there was silence between them, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Eric could feel the tension in her body, the uncertainty that still lingered. He knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. They were about to face the most difficult challenge of their lives, fighting for their love and the future of Valeria. The next few days were filled with tension and uncertainty. Eric and the Queen worked tirelessly, meeting with the council, speaking to the people, and trying to sway the hearts and minds of those around them. The political landscape was shifting, and not everyone was on their side. But Eric knew that the Queen's determination would carry them through. She was a leader, and she had the strength to make difficult choices, no matter the cost. One evening, as they prepared for yet another council meeting, Arik could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She had been working non-stop, trying to balance her responsibilities as queen with the emotional turmoil of their situation. He could see how much she was struggling, how the weight of her crown was slowly wearing her down.
"Arik," she said quietly, her voice strained, "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this.
Every decision feels like it's tearing me apart. I don't know who I am anymore." Eric took her hands in his once more, his voice gentle. "You're still the woman I fell in love with," he said. "And that's all that matters. You're still the Queen of Valeria, but you don't have to do this alone. You have me, and together we'll find a way." Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at him, and for a moment she seemed to lose the strength that had always defined her. "I want to believe that," she whispered. "I want to believe that we can make it through this. But I'm so scared, Eric. I'm so scared that we'll lose everything."
Arik pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "We won't lose everything," he promised.
"Not as long as we're together." In the days that followed, the political pressure continued to mount. The council pushed harder for the marriage alliance with the Koran Empire, but Eric and the Queen refused to back down. They spoke to the people, they rallied support, and slowly they began to shift the tide. The people of Valeria, who had once feared the Koran Empire, started to see the strength in the Queen's leadership. They saw her not just as a ruler, but as someone who truly cared for them. Finally, the day came when the council convened one last time to vote on the alliance. Eric stood beside the Queen as she addressed the council, her voice steady and filled with conviction. "I will not marry for power," she said, her eyes scanning the room. "I will not bind Valeria to an empire that does not value our freedom. I will marry for love, for peace, and for the future of our people, and I will choose my heart over politics, no matter the cost. The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. Eric could feel the weight of the moment, knowing that this decision would change the course of history. The council members exchanged glances, some hesitant, others resolute, but in the end, it was clear. The Queen's message had resonated. She would not bow to political pressure. She would lead her people with love, not fear. And in that moment, Eric knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. He had fought for her, and she had fought for him. And together, they had secured their future.